in-person services now on Sundays. I encourage you to check that out, but take advantage of that. If you haven't already, please text your information to that number for us, and we can make sure that you're on our mailing list so that you are notified of future events as well. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Rich. Rich has been volunteering for Crossroads for a number of years now, and almost 10. I was thinking about that. Is that right? It's a long time. I'm really grateful for Rich. Rich has a great heart for this. He's impacted a ton of people, but he went through a transition in his own career here not long ago, and he's going to talk about that.
Yeah. Thanks, Harry. Yeah, welcome everybody. Yeah, I've been volunteering for almost 10 years. And so I'd like to just kind of share a little bit about my testimony of job transition. I've written it out. It might sound a little formal. I'm usually not that formal. But I want to make sure I don't miss things that I think are really important to my journey and to my story. And I have just recently gone through transition planfully. I was at Honeywell for a number of years, almost 9 years, and during the pandemic, a lot of things started to happen. So a lot of us said, I think it's a good time to go. So God delivered me from that experience and brought me into a nonprofit. And I'm kind of at the end of my career, so I'm looking at kind of transitioning into something that's a little bit more meaningful, giving back, if you will. I guess you can think of it that way. So I'm now the managing director of technology apprenticeships for CompTIA, which is a nonprofit IT membership organization, trade association. It's the largest in the world. And we do a lot of workforce development stuff for underserved populations and things. So I'm starting an apprenticeship program with the Department of Labor and doing all kinds of things in that regard. So it's much more rewarding work than what I had at Honeywell for sure. So I've just, again, gone through some transition, but again, it was a planful way. I wasn't kicked out to the street like what's happened many times in the past. So I'm very delighted here to be here and tell my story. So if I may, I'm just going to kind of read through this, and I can answer any questions or comments and get your impressions as to what my journey was. So basically, I started the Crossroads journey back in 2008 when I went through transition the first time in my career. I actually took small group classes from the person who brought this to Minnesota, Dave Sparkman. You may have heard of him. Great guy who I was able to get a lot of instruction from him. He was a great mentor of mine, and he was a senior vice president at United Healthcare. And so what really impressed me was the fact that this guy, who had pretty high position in a pretty big company, took the time to work with me and be with me and do the things that Harry's talking about in terms of being in fellowship with me. And that was really meaningful. So I really knew that I was in a place that cared about me. And that's what we try to reflect in our ministry team too, is that you have an individual situation that's going on that you need to be cared for. I don't care what your situation is. When you're in transition, it's drag. It's a real drag, and it's never positive in many respects. So we're here for you. We're here for you. And I was really impressed that Dave, certainly reflected that in my life, that leadership to take me through this journey. So basically, I conducted 3 job searches from 2008 to 2012. And if you remember back in 2008, that's when the Great Recession hit. Yeah, I guess it was the biggest. I don't know. To me, it was big. So and one of those job searches took me out of the state, brought me to San Francisco for 8 months, and I came back. So I relocated twice in 1 year. So it was a tumultuous time for sure. Basically, like all of you in 2008, your investments were plummeting in value. You experienced a roller coaster of emotions because of that. Fear and anxiety were off the charts in many respects. And yet, you expect joy and elation when you certainly land a position, which I certainly, experienced. But out of that 4-year period, off and on, I was out of work for 18 months. It's a long time. And I don't wish it upon anyone. So, but being in transition really meant being in relationship with others. Once I kind of figured that out, we have a relational God that we relate to, and bringing that into the relationships with people on earth and really making sure that that was a center point in my journey was really, really important. So basically, what I found very quickly is that people will help other people that they like and trust. So it was really important that I stood out and helped other people, took a position of being a servant in spite of my situation, and people reflected on that, and we were able to help each other in many respects. I spent the majority of my job search effort really forming those trusting networking relationships with others. It really paid off. My daily goal was to meet with or connect with someone that could help me with my goals, not necessarily get me a job. That's really important. We do a lot of transition counseling with a lot of people, and people who are new to it try to see a one-to-one relationship between a person they meet and a job, and that's not the way networking works. The only thing you can be guaranteed with networking is more networking, and that is a gift, honestly. It really is. So it wasn't about getting a job, it was about relationships and bringing value to a relationship. So I would say to you, don't get caught up in the idea to only network with people who have a clear line of sight to a job. When folks in my classes land, and I'll tell them this up front, it's impossible when they look backwards to chart that journey to that job. Impossible. Because God's taking you in so many different directions, very intentionally. And if you're following His will, that will happen. You will get a job at His time. But to try and chart that pathway through all the people that He brings you through, it's impossible. So just keep in mind that networking guarantees more networking. So be relational in your journey. So being out of work gave me time for learning and reflection about my spiritual life, and in particular, my relationship with my Savior, Jesus Christ. I let our relationship get stale over the years. That was a huge mistake. And God brought me back into that, I'm a 𝙇𝙞𝙛𝙚 expert, so I was in deviation and I was brought back into the norm. He did that very eloquently. And over my 4-year journey, my relationship with God did mature immensely. I relearned the importance of surrendering my life to a higher power and not to rely on my own actions to control my destiny. I also relearned to internalize the gospel and be faithful to His word, communicate with God through prayer, and most importantly, to focus on the needs of others, which is really our calling as disciples of Christ. So I would say to you, do not get anxious or discouraged about your job search. Easy for me to say, right? And when, where, and how much you're going to make when you finally land. I did, but then one day I realized that as a believer, I need to faithfully surrender the problem of getting a job to Him, thereby recognizing that He controlled the outcome of the process and not me. All I could do was plan the work and work the plan dutifully, as the cliche goes. This realization put my mind at ease more days than not. I would conclude that I encourage you to do your thing, which is to work the process and faithfully surrender the outcome to Him. And let God do His thing. And that's to land you a job on His terms. I know it will come. Do that, and you may be very surprised by the result. I'm going to leave you with a scripture reading from Philippians chapter 4. These are encouraging words for anyone who needs peace right now about their job search. And this is written by Paul in a time when he was in prison. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Jesus Christ. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through Him who gives me strength. I can't tell you how many, when I go back to my Bible and my journal that I still have from this time, and reread my journey about my maturity and where I was, and where He's brought me to. And it's pretty profound, actually. I would encourage you to journal your journey, because going back into that, your own personal history and your relationships and the things that were impacted by the Lord, I think are really, really important to be mindful of. And I have that in my credenza on my desk at home, and certainly reread these things very, very diligently and dutifully to remind myself that He's in control, and I need to surrender to Him in this particular situation for sure. So best of luck to all of you. Thank you.
Rich, are you staying around?
Yeah, I'm hanging out.
I'm involved with the apprenticeship program at Department of Labor.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, well, in a weird kind of way. I just help them any way I can.
Yeah. I can hang out, absolutely.
We've had CompTIA on a weekly Zoom that I run.
Oh, really?
Trade association, yeah, so let's get together.
Yeah, that's funny.
And then, Harry, accountability stuff.
Thank you.
Wonderful talk, by the way.
Thanks.
Who should I send? I'm involved with a small church group that does a weekly accountability group. And the guy who runs it is very, he's got some tools I want to send them to you to see how they might help. So just send them to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
There's emails on the website.
Okay, good.
Next, I'm really grateful for that message from Rich, and I really appreciate him reading that passage from Philippians in total context. People love to take Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and translate that or interpret that to mean that I can leap tall buildings in a single bound. That's really not what that is about. It's really about, regardless of what I come across in life, whatever trials, whatever problems, God's walking with me, and I can get through any of that because of God's presence in my life. And so really appreciate how we put it all in context. And it's very true, because God doesn't promise that your problems he's going to take away all your problems. He promises that he's going to walk with you through them and give you the strength to manage through them. I am really glad to also introduce Greg Rock. Greg has become a friend here in the last few months, and has been quite famous in many ways throughout the Twin Cities. You know, I posted some of you may have seen it, I posted the information about this event this morning on LinkedIn, as I always do. And what really impressed me is, because there's a big picture of Greg on there, and a number of people commented on that posting, but a number of people posted about how they were greatly helped or greatly influenced by Greg during their job search or in some other aspect of their life. But Greg is one of the best connectors around, period, in the Twin Cities, and lives in Wayzata, has lived there essentially his whole life, and is actually known. There's articles written about him as being Mr. Wayzata, because everybody knows Greg, and he's very plugged into it. But I'm really grateful and share some of his experience and wisdom and knowledge about how to connect effectively, which kind of helps in the job search. So Greg, thanks for joining us.
Oh, so first of all, I want to thank Boris for the welcome and Harry for inviting me here today. And Rich, you need to know my dad was a 36-year Honeywell employee from age 19 to 55, and Honeywell is a big part of our family for a long time.
It's hard in this community not to run into an ex-Honeywell relationship or 3M relationship.
So one of the things I fear whenever I come into a group setting like this where there's a speaker, you wonder, how long are they going to talk? So Harry told me I have an hour, but what I'd like to do is break this up into maybe 12 little 5-minute segments and offer up some help or interaction from you along the way. I'm going to open with some comments, tell you a little bit about me. Then I'm going to go through 10 things that have been instrumental in my crossroads, my journey over the last 40 plus years as an adult business person. And then close by sharing with you where I'm at in my life today and why an opportunity like this is pretty important for me. So jumping right into it, I was born in Minnesota and raised in Chicago, kindergarten through high school. My dad was transferred with Honeywell twice, down to Chicago and back here. And as a kid, I had law enforcement in my blood. I had a police scanner on my bedside table from the time I was 5 years old. And criminal justice in college. I graduated from college and went to Dallas thinking I wanted to be a big city police officer. Lasted 3 weeks before I realized that wasn't what the journey was for me. I came back to Wayzata in the summer of '82, hired on as a CSO part-time officer, and August 31st of 1982, my sergeant was actually tragically killed in downtown Wayzata. Probably the worst day of my life, a true crossroads for me. I fell into depression, thoughts of suicide, certainly abusing alcohol, And it took me about a decade to recover from that one day. So what I learned back then is that I was a people person. I think the issue with law enforcement between the big city and the small town was I wanted to be Andy Griffith. I wanted to be the guy that bagged groceries and also helped you get the cat out of the tree. Wasn't necessarily the guy that wanted to spend time hunting down bad guys in a big city, which was probably a little bit more dangerous than I ever realized even back then. So what happened along the way for me is I started making connections. Jim Ramstead, who passed away in November, was my best friend, best man at my wedding. And he taught me what it was like to be involved in the community. And so I got myself involved in running a small business and getting active in a chamber and supporting nonprofits, getting involved in government, and ultimately worked in the Reagan administration. I worked in the US Senate, I worked in Congress, and was then an elected official for 25 years. Setting the table for all of you to understand that all the things that I just described became 90% of my life, even once I was married. 90-10 marriage. My wife worked, I worked, we had kids, we were active in the schools, we did all the things we thought we were supposed to be doing, and 10% of our life was the marriage, making bed in the morning, asking each other who was picking up dinner. And so we actually, as a family, had a transition 5 years ago. My wife retired, I semi-retired. We sold our big life in Ysette and we moved to Fort Myers, Florida. And so for the past 5 years, I've worked in player security for the Minnesota Twins. I've been a school teacher. I was a federal marshal for a year during COVID, and now I'm a starter on a golf course. We spend 2/3 of our time in Florida and 1/3 of our time here. And one of the struggles for me, especially coming back, is I'm now this old horse that's been put out to pasture. And every once in a while, good people like you wave me over the fence line and ask me questions or ask if I can help connect you to other horses. And the adjustment this has been in my life has probably been the most transformational thing, not only in my faith journey, but also with my family and with my friends, that allows me to get back in a way that that 90-10 proposition never quite added up for me. My life now is a 90-10 marriage where my wife and I, we fight for the coffee pot. We fight for the sports page. We have breakfast, lunch, dinner together. We walk the dogs, we go bike riding, we go swimming, we work out, we worship together. And 10% of our life is our identity, which is what you all have given me the opportunity to have today. And I learned as Jim Ramstead was sick and getting close to the end of life, Jim taught me that if you don't have mission and purpose and relevance and significance every day in your life, both personally and professionally, you will get depressed, your heart will break, you might get sick, and you might die. And so one of the things Jim left me in November was his toolbox. And Jim's toolbox was better than any individual I've ever known in my life. You probably have been reading the stories about Jim. They've named the Ysette post office after Jim, and he's all over the news relative to we need more Jim Ramsteads in politics, and where's the bipartisan, pragmatic voice that we lost. And, you know, as Jim got close to the end, we spent every Saturday morning with a couple close friends in a Bible study talking about the meaning of life, and I'm talking about the meaning of life that's about to end. And at 63 years old, I can honestly tell you that all of the connections I've made in all those things I talked about relative to my involvement are probably the most important things I have left in my life. And not for me, but for you. So if you can find a way before you're gone to take all the connections you have in your head and in your life and give them away to somebody else, not just in job transition, but somebody who might need help in mental health arena or chemical dependency and addiction, or somebody that's just looking for the opportunity to get better acquainted with other relationships that they've never had. That's who I was at 22 years old. And now 41 years later, I have an opportunity to talk to people about what it's like to be a connector. So I'm going to do that today. And like I said, I'm going to share 10 little snippets here relative to what made me stronger. But the one thing you need to know is that I spoke at a prayer breakfast in 2016, And for the first time in my life, in front of my mom and my dad and my sister, my brother, my wife and my son, and 250 of my closest friends, that one, I was an abuser of alcohol, quit drinking 10 years ago, and it's been a good run for me. And I was an egomaniac. And the egomaniac wasn't created by this maliciousness in my heart that I wanted to be king of the chessboard. It was people putting me on a pedestal, on a place that I didn't want to live. And so you climb and climb and climb to get to the top of the mountain and think you finally arrive, and then you look around at the top of the mountain and realize, man, it's a very small place. A lot of the people you meet at the top of the mountain have given up their friends, their family, their health, their marriage, their integrity, all of the above. And I have to be honest with you, that's where I spent a good chunk of my time, living in a place that I really never wanted to be. So for the last 10 years, alcohol-free, last 10 years, knowing that I have an ego problem, so I locked my ego in my trunk, but I still have the key. So every once in a while, people will put that key in the trunk and pop the ego out and start calling me Mr. 𝙂𝙤𝙗 again and telling me what a great guy I am and boy, you're the best connector. And pretty soon I kind of step back and I let you go for a while. And then I put the ego back in the trunk and close the door and realize that's not who I want to be. And so the benefit of being in front of a group like this, and I know this is a group of people in transition and thinking about ways to network and connect and relationship build, you all are giving me the greatest gift to be the person I've always wanted to be, but just never really took the time to get deep enough to know that's who I always was. So we'll jump in here, and I don't know if you've ever seen the YouTube video of the guy that puts two plastic cups on a table and pours water in one of the cups, and it's all the things that we think we are, and pretty soon you have this plastic cup sitting there that's full to the rim, and you tell people your faith and your family and your friends are the most important things, and then you look at this plastic cup full of 𝙤𝙤𝙗 stuff and realize that no, that when God talks, I think it's John 3:30, where God talks about more of him and less of us. Well, that plastic cup represents no room for God. And God basically wants you to take that plastic cup and pour it out and start with an empty cup. And after I saw it, I tried to visualize in my own life, okay, what does that look like for 𝙤𝙤𝙗? So I decided, you know what, God, I'm going to let you drive for a while. So I said, I'm going to turn over the front seat, the driver's seat to God. And I'm going to ride in the passenger seats just to make sure that if God's not taking me where I want to go, that I can reach over and start steering things just to straighten God out a little bit or work the pedals. And until I realized that no, God wanted me in the back seat, behind the passenger seat, buckled in so I couldn't touch the wheel or get the pedals. And pretty soon I started realizing that God would start taking me places, one, I never wanted to go, nor would go, and didn't allow me to. And so now I feel like I have this empty glass every day, starting here at Crossroads, where God is going to give me an opportunity today to start filling that cup up with your needs, not my needs. And so being a connector, you have to be very careful where you're in my role, because being a connector is part of that ego piece, where people will start telling you're great at it, you know everybody, you're Mr. 𝙂𝙤𝙗. And the people that would give me those titles weren't necessarily doing it to mess with me or maliciously, but it affected the way I did 𝙤𝙤𝙗. So from this moment on now, I just want to set that aside and understand that that's the 𝙤𝙤𝙗 dilemma every day, to not let this be about me. So now I'm going to share you some tips with you guys that aren't necessarily about me, but that have been taught by other people like you. When we're done today, I hope that you can post my email and my phone number. If anybody wants to have a continued conversation with me at any time, I will take all emails, I will take all phone calls, I will take all meetings. If you need me for anything relative to relationships or advancing your mission personally and professionally, I'm a yes. Sometimes I say no, but that's usually about a timing issue, but I will always do whatever I can to help connect you and help you on your journey, not just the job transition. So any questions? Just going in, that's who I am. I've set the table. We're good with that. I want to thank my mom, or actually my mom's passed away. I want to thank my dad, my wife, my son, and everybody else who's watching this morning just to get the numbers up. I got everybody up early, so I know they're watching at home. So thank you very much. I was given the book by Malcolm Gladwell years ago called Tipping Point. And there's 3 kinds of people that are talked about in the tipping point. One is the connectors, which I think I'm probably a pretty strong connector. The other are mavens and salespeople. So the connectors are the people specialists, right? We're the ones that want to introduce people to other people, help other people do something good. Then there's the maven specialists, and they're the ones with the information. They're the smart people. They're the wisdom, guidance, and counsel people. And lastly are the salespeople, kind of that charismatic specialist that can sell anything. And I'm probably pretty good at the connecting and the sales side, but this time in my life, I feel like I want to spend all my time connecting other people for good. So that will set the table for things that Gladwell talked about we are all about making friends and acquaintances in everything we do. At a chamber meeting, at a Rotary meeting, at a council meeting, at a school board meeting, at a Crossroads meeting. The benefit of this cross-section of activity that I've had in my life has allowed me to meet a lot of people in a lot of places. And if you make an impact on somebody's life in any one of those arenas, you probably have a pretty good chance of being able to pick up the phone and say, hey, Murray, I would like you to meet my friend Harry. I think there might be some two-way synergy there. What do you think? And take a chance, and you get to a point in life where people have enough respect and credibility for the phone call that Murray and Harry are going to get together. Maybe over the phone, maybe for a cup of coffee, who knows when, but you finally establish some credibility where if I'm offering 2 people up in my network, most people know that there's nothing in it for me, that I'm truly doing this because there might be some greater good. And I've actually gotten to the point right now where if I call somebody up I know and ask for help and they ask me why, I might hang up. Just because I'm at the point in my life right now where most people know me better than that. That there is no hidden agenda or vested interest in me having Murray and Harry get together, especially in career transition. And I never know where it's going to go. So that's why I never say no. So we talk about the 6 degrees of separation. You've heard the Kevin Bacon deal. I mean, I can't believe how connected we are as a people. It's not about me, but if I go back to that analogy of used to being on the chessboard and wanting to be king, my goal was to eliminate the competition so I was the only thing left on the chessboard. That's the only place to live. That's that mountaintop experience where now I realize I want to be a pawn on God's chessboard. There's more of us. There's more connections, there's more stuff to be done, there's just more activity that's generated by humans. And I know it's been hard during COVID, but I tell you what, I'm missing human contact and human relationships more than I have in my entire life, and I'm a people guy. My wife and I locked ourselves down for 3 months in Florida, and we were both, like, my wife was an elementary school teacher and a coach, and I'm this connecting guy. It was really hard for us. Emotionally, mentally, for the 2 of us. We were fine together, but we were starving for you. We were starving for our friends and family. We were starving for that interaction. And now I'm kind of living in what I consider kind of this COVID carnage out there. You know, people who are struggling with mental health, struggling with some job transition stuff. And just, I'm anxious to be this politely aggressive guerrilla warrior to get back in the game again for all of you who are wandering around trying to figure out what's next. Because to be honest with you, I am too, but it's not job related. It's like, what's the 4th quarter look like now? I mean, we've been through all these things with the twins and the federal agencies and Homeland Security and teaching and the golf course, and God is like just gently whispering in my ear every morning. Just go to Crossroads this morning, give you a little talk, and then I'll send you somewhere else at 9:05. So I'm in the back seat, don't know where God's going to take me today, but this is quite a nice start. So the first thing, and this is the hardest thing for me, but we need to listen. And listening is not hearing. Listening is not hearing. Listening can be that little voice I had in my car driving over here this morning, totally unprepared for this presentation other than having a few pieces of paper and a folder asking God, what do you want me to say this morning? What message needs to be delivered? And I was telling Harry a story. About 2 years ago, I substituted for a speaker in a church down in Egan who canceled last minute, wasn't able to make it, asked if I would go, and I'm like, yes. And this was actually when people were getting together again, and there was, I don't know, 50 to 100 people in the crowd. When you realized the speaker wasn't there and it was me, you could just see the disappointment in the faces of the people that had the expectation that Murray was going to be speaking today, and now they had to settle for me. So it went pretty well, and I finished on time, and there was one gentleman that was sticking around, waiting to talk to me. Actually, the only one who was waiting to stick around and talk to me. And we walked outside, and this gentleman told me that he was struggling in his personal and professional life. And he had sat on the edge of his bed that morning and had decided he was either coming to church to hear the speaker or to end his life. And that was the day I really knew that God was in charge. It wasn't about Greg Rye subbing for the guy. It wasn't for Greg Rye giving this talk like I'm giving this morning. God put me where he needed me that day. Since then, this person's landed on his feet, got a great job, turned his life around. We actually met out on a dock in Wayzata this summer, just one-on-one to just catch up. And he has no idea the impact he had on my life that day. And that I probably did as well. So make sure you're listening. Make sure you're paying attention to what you're hearing. And remembering that listening is not hearing. So the second thing, do something that scares you every day. Like take you out of your comfort zone. You know, there was a time in my life where, believe it or not, Greg Rye would have a hard time standing up here and talking to a group of strangers. I was pretty good with people I knew and felt comfortable with, but when it was people I didn't know, just the nervousness and the anxiety did not, it's not where I'm at today. And I think part of it was God kept pushing me out of my comfort zone. When you become a school board member, a city council member, or you work in government, and pretty soon you're having to go out and speak on behalf of organizations that you're part of, and then also decide, you know, somebody calls you up and say, hey, would you be willing to speak to our Rotary Club or our chamber or our transition group? I took some chances along the way as well. And early on in law enforcement, I was pretty good at asking questions, but I wanted the facts and just the facts, and I wasn't really into any emotion. It was purely black and white conversation. And now I've learned that some of the things that have been taught to me by people like you, other people in my own community, is that you've all made me better. I've stolen best practices from other speakers. I've stolen best practices from content. I've stolen best practices from people I've only met once in my life, and I get to tell stories about. So just be thinking about ways that you can be stepping out of your comfort zone, which certainly being in transition is probably as scary as it gets. And as I sit here today and talk to you about all these tips for connecting and being in transition, I've actually never been out of work. So went from law enforcement, given a job in government, started my own printing company, started my own consulting company, and then from there, explained to you the other jobs that just, you know, through a favor with the twins, I got a job there, through a favor from Homeland Security, I'm now a marshal, through a friend of schools, I'm now a teacher, and now through a buddy, I'm a starter on a golf course. So even though I've not been in your seat, I've had enough interaction with people like you that I honestly know the best practices that I can steal from friends and give to you, or steal your best practices and give to them, and know that let's just put it all in the middle, make sure it's available to anybody who needs it. So for me, it's not necessarily that I'm not the information specialist, I'm not the maven, but I'm certainly the connector. And once again, I will share any connection with any relationship I have personally and professionally for anybody. Anybody. So you just think of the power of just that one domino. If we tip the Greg Ryan domino, where it might go. And think of the dominoes that are tipping along the way and where their dominoes might go. We can get to anybody, anybody, any company, any person, anywhere in the world. It might not start, you know, anywhere but with me, to you, but we can get to anybody. So be optimistic that the connectors that you're hanging around with and the transitions you're making in this relationship building experience, that never underestimate the value of that one person you met in line at Starbucks this morning. So when Ramstead died, Ram's his nickname, when Ramstead died in November, and I knew I had his toolbox, I was waiting for the first phone call I was going to get from somebody who needed me to call Jim. And it happened on Christmas Eve. I got a call from somebody whose son had just overdosed on opioids and was in a crack house somewhere in North Minneapolis and needed to get into treatment and wondered if I could help. And I'm like, absolutely. And I went to Ram's toolbox and I pulled out the best two numbers of people I had in that arena, like two high-level people who both took my phone call. And by the day after Christmas, this person was on an airplane on the way to a treatment center in Florida, where I just happened to be living at the time. Got a 30-day stay at this place that was unavailable, no beds. And my connection with Jim and my connections to his toolbox and the toolbox connections to these other people saved somebody's life. And you know what I did to make that happen? I made a phone call. That's it. Phone call probably lasted less than 5 minutes. Called me back, had to call one other person to make it happen. So Greg and I spent 10 minutes of his time using connections of his dead friend, my closest friend, to people who were still willing to help save a life happen. Don't underestimate the power of that and do something scary every day. We good? Anybody have any questions? Anybody need to stretch at home? Do we need to grab coffee, water? All right, so we're right on time here. Number 3, be okay with not knowing. Be okay with not knowing. And what I mean by that is you don't always have to have the answer. If you don't know something, admit it. Take time to find out. If you don't know who, take time to find out who. Gather intel, especially in this job search. It's like, I tell people, you gotta be like a politely aggressive guerrilla warrior, Navy SEAL Special Ops, going underground and finding out stuff before anybody else finds it out. So let's just say Greg Ryan is speaking at a transition meeting. And at the end of my talk today, I let you guys know, I know where there's a great job opportunity. It's a fantastic finance position. It's at Murray's old company, 𝙤𝙤𝙗, wonderful job. And you guys are all ignoring me, writing it down right now, because you know you're going to look it up when you get to your car. And hopefully by the time you get home today, you're going to have an interview. And then you're going to get to Turk Incorporated next week for your interview, and you're going to be in the lobby. And guess who's going to be there? Everybody in the church basement. So I just spilled the beans, and now suddenly everybody and their brother is chasing the same deal, which is great, except now you're in the midst of the masses, right? But wouldn't it have been great if you had gathered that intel some other way, or maybe Murray told you about it when he was golfing out with a girl last week and said, yeah, they're thinking about posting this deal, and you ran into their CEO, and pretty soon you had a meeting. Greg Ryan never announced it at the church basement because the job was already filled. So don't always wait for something to be on the marquee, post it online, or telling other friends about it, because pretty soon the friends you tell about it, you're going to see them sitting in the same lobby at Turk looking for the same opportunity. So you got to gather intel, be okay with not knowing, but find ways to find out quietly in your own little world. And I'm not discouraging helping other people with general information. But right now, where you sit in your transition, it's kind of like the flight attendant before the plane takes off, telling the adult what? Put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you put it on your kids. So, which is a pretty good metaphor for let's get you guys landed And once we get you landed, then you can start helping other people like I'm trying to. But I also run into a lot of people that will tell me at our meetings, like, I have found 15 people find jobs in the last 18 months. And I'm like, fantastic. And they're like, yeah, but I'm having a hard time finding something for me. So you got to find a way to balance that activity between you and them. I'm all in for giving, but there's times in your life where you have to be a taker, especially as it relates to your ability to take care of your family and earn income. So be good to yourself right now. It doesn't mean you can't help others, but put yourself first right now, at least in terms of the activity. So you're doing at least as much for yourself as you're doing for other people. And that actually flies in the face of what I honestly believe just generally in my life. I want to be the giver all the time. But a job transformation is a pretty big deal. It has a lot of impact on the way your family functions, the way you're able to live your life. And so this is one time that I think it's okay to put yourself first. Number 4, I'm going to take a sip of coffee here, is always be prepared. Always be prepared. So if you're going to be going into a meeting this afternoon with this opportunity, make sure you know enough information about this company and about this person and about anything else that might be valuable to the meeting before you go. It's kind of like the Boy Scout rule, always remind us of the importance of taking safety precautions like having an emergency contact list, an earthquake plan, a first aid kit. Less dire but equally important circumstances to connectors include being equipped at a moment's notice to entertain guests, facilitate a connection, or simply help out a friend. I think it's important for us to always remember that if we're not prepared and the people that we're meeting with ask you some pretty important, relevant questions, and you don't have an answer because you're not prepared, the chances of a second meeting or another interaction are diminished greatly. So show them that you at least took the time to be ready for this meeting, to be ready for this encounter, knowing that this might be the one bite of the apple you're going to get. So I like telling, it's fun having Murray here. Murray's been a dear friend of mine, personally and professionally, for a long time. But one of the greatest business stories of all time, relative to being prepared, happened to the company Murray worked at. I was in the printing business, and for years, I wanted to land the printing business of Turkey. And I chased them forever. I did all the things a connector would do and all the things a sales guy would do, and I just couldn't crack the company. Until one afternoon, I got a call from their CEO who had, I think it was Hans Turk. Hans Turk was flying from Germany to Minneapolis, and they needed business cards for Hans Turk. And the CEO called me, the guy that had been persistently chasing this company for over a decade, and asked me if I could get business cards. This is like Friday afternoon, and Hans Turk was arriving. I was at a country club at 5 o'clock and needed cards. I said, well, why would you ask your printer? And he said, well, we called our printer, and our printer closed for the afternoon. Everybody's at the cabin or was at some company event. And I said, you'll have those cards. And I had no idea how I was going to get those cards done. So I actually ended up going to another printer because my people were gone for the afternoon as well. It was like a Friday afternoon and a beautiful summer day. And I went to another printer in 𝑌Z and got these cards printed and met them at the front door, trying to be the connector of all time. And this Jaguar pulls up and Hans Turk gets out, and I hand him his business cards. And his eyes got as big as silver dollars, looking at me like, oh my gosh. And he doesn't look at me like, Greg Ryan, thanks for the business card. He looks over at Bill Schneider and says, Bill, thank you so much, and thanks to the CEO, and they go inside. And I'm kind of like, well, the connector did what the connector would do, and hopefully something good will come out of that. And I can tell you, Monday morning, the CEO of Turk called me back again and asked me to come over that week to begin taking over a fairly good chunk of this printing business. Because of that one simple phone call that I was prepared to take from connections I had tried to make, and ultimately became, the relationship with me and that company and Murray and all his colleagues became the biggest customer I had for 20 years. All because that one phone call on Friday afternoon for that one box of business cards through the connections I've been trying to make for a decade. So the fifth thing, and we're good. We're halfway done here. Is there everybody still good with me? It's like the minister speaking for an hour. Like if the minister stood up and said, "I'm going to talk for an hour today," half of you would probably be leaving about right now. So the fact that you would give me an hour, I'm trying to make this as engaging as possible. But if you have any questions along the way or want to interrupt me, just stop me and raise your hand. So the fifth thing, which is one of the most important things, and I think it's been so hard because of COVID, is you have to get out. You need to get out. And I know right now because of COVID, it's making it very difficult. Our son is a banker with TCF, Chemical Bank to Huntington Bank now. Our 30-year-old son, not married, outgoing kid, was just made a permanently remote employee. Working out of his basement in his pajamas, lending money. And Lisa and I are devastated about it. Knowing that's like taking a dog that loves to run through the pastures and putting the dog in a kennel for 12 hours. It's not healthy. So we're not, I won't say coercing, we're counseling our son into considering something else that gets him back out with people. I'm a people person. He's a people person on steroids. Our son is so good with people. And we're just worried about, him not being able to go to the company gym or going out to lunch with buddies or happy hour after work or team meetings during the day. Our son would love going to the campus. The TCF loved it. So if you can find a way to get past some of the fear that's out there right now in safe ways, get out. Like if you're in transition right now, you got to be up at 6 in the morning, dressed and ready for work, and have your calendar packed up with email interaction and phone interaction and coffee interaction and this interaction. So by the end of the day, when you come home and your spouse or significant other says, "What'd you do today?" you can say, "I made 50 contacts. I sent 10 emails. I made 10 phone calls. I had 5 coffee meetings. I delivered a box of Willette's rolls to a Target. I took a pizza to a company I've always wanted to work for. I put 10 thank you notes in the mail. I went to Crossroads and met 10 people in person and 1,000 people online." So be thinking about what your activity looks like and make sure you're journaling it. Make sure you're keeping track. And think about that. Think if you did 50 things a day. I know it's a big number. I always like thinking big. If you did 50 things on Monday, the 1st of September, by the end of the week, you've made 250 contacts. By the end of the month, you've made 1,000 contacts. And by the end of one quarter, you've made 3,000 contacts. And those plates are spinning while you're sleeping. So it's a numbers game. Get out if you can. And getting out doesn't mean in person. I understand right now there's a lot of people that are having a hard time with the face-to-face stuff. But force yourself to get out through technology or social media or in the mailbox or on the phone or leave voicemails or deliver something to somebody where you don't have to have the people contact, but look for ways to make that connection. It's really important.
One effective way is snail mail. People forget about that. Real mail. I mean, that's really effective because it's so unusual.
Amen.
You can be more effective than you think.
So a couple weeks ago, I read a book called 365 Thank Yous. 365 Thank Yous is written by a guy named John Craylor. And he was at a crossroads in his life and going through some struggles in his life. And he decided he was going to write one thank you note a day for 365 consecutive days. And journal it. Who they went to, what the outcome was, the impact it made on his life. And when I got done reading this book, I was so inspired by it that I went through an agent, a publisher, a couple other sources where I finally got the guy's cell phone number. He lives in California. And I called John Craylor up. I said, "John, I love your book. And I love it so much, I want to buy 365 of your books. And I am going to see to it that your book, not a thank you note, your book, is delivered to one person every day for the next 365 days. And we are now on day 16. This started on September 11th.
Where's my book?
It's month one. It's month one. But he has promised me that after a year that I'm journaling where these books go. And I will say that Murray is in the top 365, not like somewhere around 350. But he has agreed to fly to Minnesota and fill up an auditorium with the 365 book recipients to talk about how it impacted their life, or who they gave the book to, or how it changed their life. So to Murray's point, there is nothing more valuable than a handwritten note, thanking somebody, recognizing something that's happened, congratulating, put a stamp on it, write personally the address. And you know what it's like when you get the mail and you come in and you're going through seconds and a personal note, it's open right away. And usually the response to a personal note is another personal note or a phone call or an email. People appreciate it. You know what it feels like, right? Getting that personal note. That's probably the most impactful thing that I've done myself and still do. Most mornings, I'll jot down 6 personal notes and have them in the mailbox stamped and ready to go by the time my coffee's on. That's one of my day starters. Number 6, take every meeting. Now, I know that sounds hard, but what you never know is the one you say no to could be the next job opportunity, could be the next domino to fall, could be the next pawn on the chessboard. Take every meeting. Now, you don't necessarily have to drive from Arden Hills out to Wayzata to have coffee with Greg Ryan. Maybe your meeting's going to be over the phone. Maybe it's going to be a Zoom call or a Skype call or a GoToMeeting or virtual, whatever, but take every meeting. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten to a point in my life right now where I didn't do something that I know I should have and find out later how tragic that lost opportunity was. Just because I was too busy. Back in that 90-10 marriage where I told you I was just so busy, I didn't have time to be married because all we would do is make the bed in the morning and ask who has dinner. Because I got school board, you have union, Michael's got football. It's like, find a way. We're not that important that we have to say, you know, Harry, I'd love to get together with you. My calendar's too busy.
Okay, real quick story is somebody I know landed their job. They're a senior director at a large company, but landed their job through conversation he had with an 85-year-old great grandmother that never worked outside the home, and he thought he was completely wasting his time talking to her, and she made it it was a few steps, but she made a referral that landed him his job. And so you not to chase after 85-year-old great grandmothers for your networking, but you never know where it's going to come from.
Never know. And I think that the key is if you can stay laser focused and make sure your meetings are managed. When I first started getting into this, connecting people in transition, this has truly been my ministry. I don't do this for a living. But in the old days, when I was young and really hadn't learned how important this is, I used to think that my job was to keep you busy. So if you called me up and wanted to meet 10 of my friends, I wanted to get you with 10 of my friends as fast as possible so you'd leave me alone. So you'd be happy that, oh my God, Greg Wright gave me 10 connections or 20 connections. And then I'd run into you a month later and you'd say, oh, Greg, thanks for all your help. And I'm like, how'd it go? And you're like, did you introduce me to your softball roster? Because everybody I met were people that you play softball with. They weren't focused on, they didn't even know why they were meeting. I was just giving them names. So now I've gotten better. Try and stay laser focused. I try to let people know, if you want to meet people in my world, tell me who it is you want to meet. As opposed to me saying you need to meet Harry and Murray with no real connection as to why, as opposed to you saying, hey, I see you're connected to Greg Page at Cargill, or I see you're connected to Steve Eastman at Polaris. I mean, I ask people to tell me, you get to all my connections. You know, start mining my LinkedIn connections. Find a company you like, find a person that you'd like to know. Then I will make that introduction because you told me that there's actually a reason why. As opposed to just this random deal where Greg Rye gets you 20 meetings and you're grateful, but none of them really focused on anything other than, I just wanted to keep you busy. And so the more focused you can be on who you're meeting with and why, and telling people in your network, like, I know you're connected to XYZ company or XYZ person, would you help me get in to see them? And do it in small bites. Don't send a connector a list that says, hey, there's 100 people in your network I'd love to meet, and here they are. Well, I can tell you on your desk, there's a today list, and then there's a to-do list. And that list of 100 goes to the to-do list, which may or may not ever happen. Today's gonna happen today. And if you gave me 1 or 2, I'll knock that out before I go to bed. So be realistic with the people you're connecting with, what you're asking them for, and don't give them too much. You know, I tell people a good metaphor is, you guys are all racing, people that are in transition right now, you're racing around this track, trying to win this race to find the next opportunity. And you need to tell me, do you want me as a spectator who's just clapping every time you drive by, saying, whoop, 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 you race by, but I'm never doing anything other than giving you accolades? And somebody like me, I'd rather be in the pits as a member of your pit crew. So when I see you come racing down the pits, I know that my job is to put fuel in your tank or change your tires, check your oil, be a pusher. I want an assignment. Otherwise, it's a wasted engagement. Keep me posted on your job search, and then we meet again a month later and you tell me the same thing and I've done nothing for you. So make sure when you get together with your centers of influence, especially busy centers of influence, people that you care about know can help you, make sure you're giving them an assignment. I've gotten to the point right now where when I'm done meeting with people in transition, I tell you what I'm going to do for you. I'm definitely going to send you something I call my silo system. And if you've got my email and you want my silo system, it's a single 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that just asks 3 simple questions. What are your top 10 interest areas or passions? What are the top 100 companies that align with those interest areas or passions, things we don't see in your resume? And the last silo is 1,000 connections to get you from these interest areas to these companies by these people. And I'm one of those people. So it's almost like a Ponzi scheme to help people get more connections, and it works. So I'll send you that. Then I tell you to send me 1 company, 1 person in my world who you'd like to meet, and I'll make it happen. But you tell me who they are. And then lastly, I'll park it on my dashboard. The 85-year-old grandma story. Like, I might drive home today and be listening to the radio and hear about some opportunity, and you mentioned to me that you were interested in that company. Like, oh my gosh, I was at a breakfast meeting with her today. That happens all the time. If you're present, if you really are present with the people you're engaging with. So those are 3 things that I actually assign myself for you every time we meet. And most of you who know me know that I will always ask for that. Like, I want an assignment. Otherwise, it's just a great meeting. We'll talk 3 months from now, and it's like, hey, how's it going? Same thing. I'll say, well, keep me posted. Or send me, no, this was the old one. It was really good. Send me a copy of your resume. What's that? What's that? I mean, it usually means it's going somewhere in a file folder, or it's going into that to-do list box that I might find is like, huh, wonder if she ever got a job. That was 6 months ago. So help us help you, especially the people that truly have the heart to be a connector on your behalf in this transition. Give us something to do. Don't just walk away like, hey, it was a great meeting. Hopefully we'll have a conversation again sometime. If you're going to engage with these people in your network, give them something to do for you. Because down the road, guess what? I'm going to be calling you back because I know you landed and I know where you are and I see this job posting and you're going to remember what we did for each other. The first thing you're going to say is, absolutely, send me your friend, right? That's the give back. So right now, we're like putting chips in a little basket right now. We're down the road. We're going to be calling the same people back that we helped, asking them to help the next person in line. That's where this equation really just blows up. Where suddenly now all these people that I've been in transition over the last 45 years, most of them are now working. And guess what? I now have connections to all of you and all of your connections. And so guess what? The person that you were involved with, helping them find the job, the next time that they have a friend in need, do you think they're going to say no to you? Not a chance. They'll want to help you. So it's kind of, it goes back to that plastic cup story I talked about. Do you have enough capacity, enough room in your cup to say yes to the next person that calls for your help? Or is it too full with Greg Rye stuff that I just don't have the time? Okay, we got 4 left here and we got 15 minutes. So do you guys know what the Tom Sawyer mentality is? The make lemonade type story. I mean, just to always have the right attitude, right? Attitude and effort. It didn't matter if he was just painting the neighbor's fence or getting other people delegated to help paint the neighbor's fence. It's important for you to look for possibilities in any situation, no matter how seemingly good or bad they may appear. Okay? 2 things you control. 2. I don't control yours, you don't control mine. And that is your attitude and your effort. So in this transition, if you get up every morning and saying, I got a great attitude and I'm going to give it all I got today. Start the day with that. There's a pretty good chance that some good things are going to happen. I'm not going to guarantee you're going to get a job today, but if you just start with those 2 simple things, as opposed to, I give up, or I'm not taking a day off. Just that attitude thing will have an impact on where you go today, tomorrow, in the job search, in the transition. So that attitude and that effort piece are Lisa and I used to tell Michael, as long as you give us an A effort and an A attitude, and you come home with Fs, we will accept that grade. And to this day, I mean, we used to say as he was leaving the house, be a leader. He'd like look at us like, I'm trying, and I was like, you are a leader. Like he just set himself straight every day to try to have a positive attitude, try to make a difference in the lives of somebody else, try to take that faith of loving God, loving your neighbor, and implementing it at school, and then coming home at night and knowing that he gave it the best he got, but report cards were all C's, and we knew he was giving it his best. We celebrated the C's. And I think that's on you relative to be thinking about how do you approach your personal and professional life or this transition you're in right now. How's your attitude?
I wish you were my dad.
So I think that in the end, if you're in a frustrating meeting, for example, what can you learn from those people? Even if it's frustrating for you and you might have a bad attitude and you don't think the meeting's going anywhere. You have to understand you need to meet people where they're at that day. And hopefully they'll meet you where you're at that day. And if it's an attitude thing, you can get up every morning by saying, what can I learn from this experience? What can I learn from these people? And you'll find you'll be a lot better off relative to moving on to the next thing. So if you're not going to the next meeting, and I'm like, Murray, I got to tell you about the last meeting I just had. And set the table with this bad experience where suddenly Murray and I was like, I can't wait to get away from me because all I did was dump my last negative story on Murray, and then I've been asking for help, right? So I think a lot of it has to do with how you set the table with the connections you make and how you treat your connections. And the last 3. Take notes, like steal best practices. When you're in meetings with somebody, take the best stuff they're sharing with you. Make sure you're listening carefully, like I talked about earlier. If they mention something about this possible opportunity, make sure you write it down. If they tell you, oh, you need to meet my friend Bill from Cargill, and now you've met an hour later and you forgot about that piece. It's like, be writing the important things down. And I think for one, even though some people might be distracted by that, tell them like, oh my God, that's really good advice. Write that down. It kind of puffs up the person you're in the audience with too, thinking that they just gave you something that's got value, that it's a gold nugget lead, that it's a gold nugget piece of information. It's something that might inspire you to get to your next meeting. But take notes, jot things down, steal best practices, journal your journey. That's one of the cool things about this guy that wrote the 365 Thank Yous book, is journaling who it went to, and what came of it was the power of the book. The things that happened in his life because of that one simple act. Suddenly he was just like overwhelmed by the goodness that came from his note-taking and note-setting. Incredibly powerful. The last couple are really important. The number 9 thing that I've actually got in a little plaque on my wall in my office now is show appreciation. Show appreciation. Make people understand how grateful you are that you have agreed to be a member of their pit crew, or that you'd be willing to help them in any aspect of their personal or professional life. Like, show those people how grateful you are for what they're giving you back. Doesn't it feel good to be appreciated? Doesn't it feel good to be thanked? There's nothing better than that loving kindness, that emotion that comes from that, whether it's verbal or written. Certain things make you memorable. Courtesy and respect might not be those things, but they're rare enough that they might make somebody think, I really enjoyed meeting that person. Like when somebody leaves a meeting with you, are they leaving? Wow, that was an incredible hour. I can't wait to get back to my computer to say, man, I can't tell you what that meeting meant to me. I can't tell you what our time together has meant. It might not stick out like a rose in a pasture of green, but it will make people look forward to the next time you're together. In person, on the phone, via email. And be thinking about what would that next conversation be about? That's relationship building is something that's constantly changing, something that's growing, not crumbling. And I will say, networking is a hard word for me, because when I was a networker, I was the guy that would walk into a room of 200 people and I would leave with all of your cards. And even if I only had an hour, I'd find a way to get everybody's cards. And then I'd be going out into my car and be sorting through which were the good ones and the other ones I'm tossing away. And now I've gotten to a point where networking is fine, but relationship building is going into a room of 200 people. And Greg Rye runs into you and said, oh my God, you gotta meet Harry. You gotta meet Murray. You gotta meet Horace. You point people out and say, why do I meet? Trust me, those are the 6. So you walk out of there with maybe 6 contacts instead of 200, and you can't wait to set up the meeting with those 6. Instead of looking at the 195 cards that you've thrown on the floor of your passenger seat in your car. You never really wanted to meet those people. You just wanted to be able to sort through all contact information and decide where the goal was. So build relationships, make it meaningful. Now that doesn't mean that you don't go to networking events and you try to sort of do all that. I've done that, been there, done that. But I will say that if the more focused you can be on a few than the masses, and it increases your chances when you're in the masses that you're going to meet 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 good ones, as opposed to being a small group where you might not have that capacity and everybody in the room might not be who you're looking for, especially if it's specific to an industry or a sector or what kind of job you're looking for. But I think that's incredibly important. Show appreciation. You can never share too much. The last piece here, and then I'll close, is when this whole thing is over, especially in the transition, and even in my life now, where we've gone from being the crazy 90-10 working people to this 90-10 living real life people that learn to give back without expecting anything in return. This giving heart that's been created in you is a real, genuine, authentic you. I'm at the point right now where I love your birthday. Love it. If I find out it's your birthday, I can't wait to send you the card or drop off a gift or wish you happy birthday. But I hate my birthday. You know why I hate my birthday? Because it's about me. So you have to strike this balance between stealing other people's joy, who wants to love your birthday as well, and not let it be about your ego, and taking something for yourself that you would rather give away. So I'm just going to close by saying, don't keep score, but give as much as you can. When you're in transition right now, it's okay to put yourself first, and make sure you leverage every meaningful relationship and connection that is made available to you. I'm just one guy telling all of you who are willing to listen today that I'm willing to give whatever I have to you for nothing, with no expectation, other than you giving me the gift of still having some mission, still having some purpose, still having some relevance, and still having some significance in life, till I can no longer be here to give it back. So thank you for this morning. If you need me, hopefully Harry's going to share my contact information. I wish you all well. I'm a blessed guy to have been here this morning. Thank you.
One thing I really appreciate about Greg is when he talks about all this stuff, it's real and authentic, and he means it. It's not just words that sound good, and it really is about others. And that I saw that the first time I met with him, and I've seen it over and over again in what I hear from other people. And so the networking and connecting for your job search really is about relationships. It's not about just talking to a bunch of people, and that's what Greg does in spades. And I think what so many people think that networking is some mystical skill you have to develop, and it's not. It's about building relationships with people, and it makes such a big difference in your job search and every other aspect of your life. So live your life that way as well. Really grateful for Greg. Just want to wrap up here shortly, but please take advantage of the other things that we have available through Crossroads. I mentioned the classes. I started one on Tuesday. You can still join us. It is down in Eden Prairie, but I promise it's worth the drive. And then starting in October, we'll get it posted soon on the website. Starting in October, we'll have it online again, so you can participate anywhere. But I tell you, it's so much better when we're in person and you can actually have side conversations with people and have other things going besides just watching a video online. I mean, we do interact on the classes. For our monthly meetings like this, it's a webinar where all you can do is watch the classes. Even when we're online, we're interacting. Hard to have side conversations in the middle of that when there's a number of other people in the group. We've got the workshop coming up on October 16th, Saturday. I promise, even if you're in the class, that is a great supplement to it to help you get going on your job search faster, and a ton of great information there. So take advantage of that too. And our next meeting here will be October, what is it, third Thursday, whatever it is. I can't remember the date now offhand, but in any case, be sure to return for that. Our next meeting otherwise is the first Thursday morning in October at Grace Church. We're going to have George Dow talk about if you're over 50, or I'd say over 40, how are you being evaluated? How can you present yourself? People get concerned about age discrimination. My fast take on that is people think there's a lot more of it out there than there actually is. I'm not naive to say that there's no age discrimination, but at the same time, it usually is about how people are coming across. And it's got, I know people that come across without energy or passion or interest in learning anymore that are in their 20s and 30s, and they don't get jobs either. And so, but when you're over 50, it's easy to say, well, it must be age discrimination.
George is a great guy too. It's be very valuable for you.
Absolutely. George is terrific. So I encourage you to take advantage of that on the first Thursday of October at Grace Church. Thanks for coming here this morning. Help yourself to any additional pastries or coffee on your way out. Feel free to stick around and talk to Greg, and hope to see you at other events. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.
I told you. You doing well?